Welcome, everyone. I'm Sue Barber, author, former IT director for a Fortune 500 company, turned executive coach, and this is the Visibility Factor podcast, where we explore how to raise your visibility and play bigger at work and in life. We'll explore key topics and welcome guests that help you shift your thinking about yourself so you can see new possibilities for your leadership. I'm on a mission to create a visibility movement for leaders to show their value and be seen for their true talent. Are you ready to take the next step towards a higher level of visibility for yourself? Let's go. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Visibility Factor podcast. This is Sue Barber, your host. I wanted to just give you a quick update. As of the time that I'm recording this, it is exactly 1 week before the launch of the new workbook, Your Journey to Visibility. I'm excited to start teaching some more of these frameworks and concepts to everybody. So if you get a chance, you can go to yourjourneytovisibility.com and it will take you to my website. You can learn more about the workbook on that page, as well as some of the webinars that I'll be hosting along with some great co-hosts to talk about some of the things that they're doing as well as what I'm doing. I'm excited for all of those to happen. And then on December 1st, I'll be reading from the workbook, so you can come and listen to that as well. All of that is on my website, so please take a moment, take a look at it. They're all free, so would love to have you join. Today's episode is going to start off in a little bit of a different way, but I want to explain why I'm talking about this. So last night in the book group, another author was reading from her book last night, and she is talking about the importance of play for kids, meaning giving them the opportunities to choose what they want to play, to speak up and ask for what they want, to make decisions, and how that really has an impact on their brains and their future voice. And it really got me thinking about how that can impact so many of us, even into adulthood. So when I was younger, there was a lot of conditioning that was out there, and a lot of people made comments like, well, good girls sit still. Good girls don't speak up. Good girls don't make a scene, right? There's all of those things. But when I was doing research for the first book, The Visibility Factor, there was also a lot of research around comments that women had internalized throughout their whole life. It was interesting to me because one of the lowest rated comments was, you can be a leader. And imagine, right, if none of us had ever really pushed through that boundary and did it, even though we were uncomfortable, even though it was scary, even though it wasn't easy for us, or even if we're told that's not something you should do. And so I just thought about that conversation last night we were having about kids and how they need to be able to use their voice. And it really struck me as to something that I just wanted to share with you and have you think about your own situation. Where were you told not to speak up? Where were you told to stay in the background? And if that was true for you, I want you to observe whether or not that's something you're still holding on to. Because if it is, that's something you can change today. You can change that limiting belief and make a new one and put it in its place instead. At the beginning of the workbook, I wanted people to reflect back on their first job. And that could be a first job in high school, or maybe an internship, or their first real job as an adult once they got out of school, or their first job that they took if they didn't decide to go to school. And in all of those roles, there were lessons that we learned from the people that we worked with, from our managers, from our experiences that we went through, where we made mistakes, where we might not have done things in the best way and we had to learn the hard way. But those are all lessons that we learned. And sometimes those lessons are something that stays with us for a long time. And so I wanted people to start with that in the beginning of the workbook, because I believe so many things that we have internalized and held on to started when we were much younger. It isn't starting in the role we have today. It started back from either beliefs we learned from our parents or from our teachers or in those first jobs that we had. In the workbook, I walked through my own experience at my first job and actually had some aha moments as I was going through that I had forgotten about. And I think that's what happens to many of us, right? Those are things that seem so long ago, unless you're much younger. Then, of course, it wasn't that long ago for you. But for those of us who have been in the workforce for quite a while, those are things that we've probably forgotten all about. And I wanted to put myself back in that situation and remember what it felt like. Remember how I felt in those moments when it was difficult, when it was challenging. And I was a 21-year-old new college graduate out in the world on my own for the first time working. And it was definitely an experience I went through. There was a lot of challenges, a lot of things that I had to learn. I was in a completely different area than I ever thought I would be working in. And it was stressful and it challenged me in ways I couldn't have even predicted. But on the flip side, it also gave me opportunities to learn new things. It was my first real exposure to people who were dealing in technology more than I had dealt with it, and seeing all of the different computers that we were using and how you could do things much faster, not compared to today's world by any stretch. But there were definitely things that I learned from that experience that I also carried with me. So, any situation, we have the things that we learned along the way. And part of why I want you to go through that in the workbook in the beginning is that I want you to remember those moments. I want you to think about what you learned, what you took away from those moments, and are you holding on to some of those things still? And I think for me, I realized how much I was still holding on to that original experience I had at my first job. And I had no idea the impact that it could still have on me, even when I think about it now. And I want you to spend a little time thinking about that for yourself. If you get the workbook, I ask a lot of questions in there to help you start to put yourself back in that moment and realize what may have happened to you. I took one of my classes through these different questions and frameworks before I put it into the workbook because I wanted to test some things out. And what was interesting is there were some aha moments where one of the people in my class referred to a situation, and when he talked about his boss, he referred to him in a way that showed that the expectations that his boss had of him were really beyond what was expected for most people. And it's not bad to be challenged by any stretch. But I think what had happened to him is he was still holding on to those high expectations of himself. And now, not only was he holding on to them for himself, but he was also using that experience to put those high expectations on the people that worked for him. And so he had his own aha moment when we went through this same exercise with him. And so that's when I realized, this is powerful. If we can start to understand where we started with some of these lessons that we learned and beliefs that we've held on to for all these years, we can change those. We don't have to hold on to them anymore. We can shift them and change them and put new ones in their place. This is important because I don't want anyone to not use their voice because they're still holding on to an old belief or holding on to a belief about themselves that they're not good enough or that they're not smart enough or that they need to do things a certain way. That might just be coming from an insecure leader who doesn't know how to lead, who doesn't know how to develop someone, who was never taught that. Most of the time, it's a cycle of this person learned from the person previous to them, and their manager maybe didn't spend any time with them and didn't teach them anything, and so they did the best that they could. Or they may have learned some toxic behaviors that they held on to. And unfortunately, this person in this class and I were part of some of those experiences. And so I feel like we get to break that cycle. We get to change that cycle and recognize that that isn't how we wanted to be as a leader. And for me, it was a shift in how I saw myself and how I could think about the work that I wanted to do and recognize that I could break free of some of those limiting beliefs that I was holding on to as well. So I want to go back to my original question. Is there something that happened in your past that might have prevented you from speaking up or you were told not to, and you have still held on to that, and it's caused you to play small? It's caused you to devalue yourself. It's caused you to hide behind someone else whose voice is louder and who is speaking up and saying things that you don't agree with. I want you to know that your voice matters. What you have to say is important. What you think about and the ideas that you have are important to share. And if you're not sharing them, then the world is missing out on those. Your company is missing out. Your team is missing out. And those ideas that you have could really make a difference for an organization or your team members specifically. I was just writing a text to someone who was someone I worked with very early on in my career, and she taught me a lot. She came from a training background, and she taught me a lot about being a consultant. And even as an internal consultant, how to look at the business from a certain perspective and ask questions that are not easy to ask, but necessary to get the answers to be able to move forward. I learned so much from her, and she had texted me tonight, and I wanted to share how impactful I felt like she was for me. So there are people who are going to be difficult and challenging in our lives, and then there are those people, Mr. Rogers calls it the helpers that come along and teach us things and help us move forward. So if you find that you're being held back from some old belief that you're holding on to, change that belief. Think about the helpers that you had in your career and how they helped you move forward when you might not have known everything, when you might have had questions, and they were there to provide answers and give you support when you needed it. Think about how you can start doing that for more people in your life and allow them to grow and develop as much as you are. Thanks so much for joining today on the Visibility Factor podcast, and we'll catch you on the next one. Thanks so much for listening to the Visibility Factor podcast. Remember that visibility starts with small steps that are intentional and consistent each day. Be bold, be visible, be the leader you were meant to be. Find us and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever else you listen to podcasts. Follow us on all of our social media platforms, which are highlighted in the show notes. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time on the Visibility Factor podcast.